have chosen the best friend's brother as the anchor for my story. That weekend, the rain pressed against the cabin windows with a patient rhythm, and Marcus stood in the doorway like a weathered shoreline, strong, unhurried, sure of himself in a world I could barely keep from slipping through my fingers. I am 34, a landscape architect who has learned to read soil and sky as if they held some secret map to my own heart. And I believed I had built a life with careful, quiet certainties. My husband, Daniel, was kind in the well-worn way of men, who never quite understood the tremble in my hands when I stood before a plan that demanded more from me than good coffee and neat lines. My best friend Lena trusted me with her stories, the way a sister presses a warm hand to a fevered brow, and I believed our bond would outlast all storms. We were a circle of safe routines. Mornings I watered the shrubs I designed. Evenings I cooked and read. Weekends I carted my laptop to the cafe and sketched new spaces that would someday shelter someone else's laughter. Then Marcus arrived, freshly divorced, a man who carried the ache of repair behind his calm smile, and the world I had folded into neat folds began to loosen at the corners. The weekend had started as a simple escape to a lakeside cabin. Lena, her brother Marcus, and me pretending to forget deadlines and the way a long marriage sometimes dissolves without a single flare of fireworks. The air tasted of pine and rain, and a quiet electricity simmered beneath our conversations. Marcus asked about the plants I designed with that patient curiosity that makes a person feel seen, and I found myself answering with a closeness I did not intend to offer. The phrases piling up between us, as if they were stepping stones I should not touch. The first touch was accidental. A brush of fingers as I handed him a mug. A polite apology that turned into a lingering glance because his skin felt like a weathered map, and I suddenly wanted to memorize every contour of it. The second touch was deliberate in the secret space of my mind, where I allowed myself to imagine the warmth of his breath on my neck as we stood closer than propriety permitted, the line between friendship and something more blurring into a soft, dangerous bink. The inciting tremor came on the last night, when Daniel's absence from the cabin's kitchen felt like a word unsaid, and the room narrowed to the two of us. I discovered, through a phone call I pretended not to hear, that my marriage was unraveling in a quiet, devastating way. Text messages bloomed with apologies that were not for me, and I felt the hollow echo of a truth I had refused to admit. I had not felt cherished for a long time, not in the way I needed to feel cherished, and the sting left me suddenly unmoored. I walked to the window and watched the rain carve rivulets down the glass, listening to the distant murmur of the lake, and I heard Marcus's soft-spoken words before he spoke them aloud, as if the room itself were listening for a confession I did not know I carried. When he spoke, Marcus spoke with a tenderness that threaded through the bruised places in my chest. He did not promise the moon. He offered a steady presence, a hand to hold when the ground felt slick. A quiet strength that reminded me of the things I had always wanted, but never believed would belong to me again. The rising action unfolded with a storm of emotions, jealousy, anger, longing, and a fierce, almost desperate need for a second chance at something real. I could feel my heartbeat tracing a rhythm I had forgotten existed, a thudding reminder of the life I might have if I dared. My senses sharpened in the cabin's muted light, the scent of pine mingling with coffee, the soft rustle of rain against the eaves. The way his voice lowered when he spoke of the divorce and the work of rebuilding a life from the shards of something that once felt complete. The more Marcus listened as I poured out the fractures in my marriage, the more I realized how long I had carried the ache of feeling invisible in a relationship that was supposed to nurture me. I began to notice the way his eyes lingered on my hands when I spoke about plans for future gardens, the way his mouth curved in a quiet, almost tentative smile when I pressed my lips into a line of resolve and refused to give in to despair. And I found myself longing for not just his company, but for his truth, an honest answer to the question of whether two adults could believe in a second chance when the past was a jagged line across their horizon. There were moments when the cabin felt too small for the gravity between us, when a look or a breath would surge into something that burned too bright to ignore. And then there came a younger coworker, Mia, who had rented a tiny cabin nearby for a writing retreat, who visited us with tea and a listening ear on the nights when the rain sounded like a chorus of distant drums. She reminded me that there were other ways to heal, other doors to walk through, and her simple, practical kindness whispered a possibility I had not permitted myself to hear aloud. Perhaps I could choose what I deserved rather than what fear allowed. If this confession has you holding your breath, if you feel the tremor in your own chest, if you cannot stop wondering what would happen if you let yourself lean into something imperfect yet real, then you must know that I chose to listen to the truth that was trying to speak through Marcus's quiet devotion and Mia's practical warmth. I chose to give myself permission to risk the ache again, to feel the ache and not run from it. The mid-story moment arrived with a choice as sharp as a winter wind, to retreat into the familiar, to bury the ache beneath a perfectly ordered life, or to step toward a new trajectory where love did not erase my past, but molded it into something wiser and more forgiving. Marcus did not chase, not with loud declarations or a dramatic sweep of grand gestures. Instead, he extended a cautious, steady invitation to walk with him into a future where our timelines might align, not in secrecy, but in a shared decision to nurture what could be true. And I did not pretend that trust came immediately, or that desire was a clean, straight road. I admitted to myself that I was not fully healed, but I was ready to be brave enough to try. If you are listening, if you are hearing your own heart's map in mine, you know what it means to grasp at a second chance with both hands and walk toward the unknown with the courage of someone who has finally learned to trust their own voice again. The truth is that Marcus and I did not plan the afterglow of our revelation, did not chart the date of our first real kiss, did not decide to live in the glow of a love that had to grow slowly. With the permission of every fear we carried, we chose to keep an honest horizon, to let the past teach us the grammar of forgiveness, and to let the future write the punctuation of trust across our joined hands. We returned home with a secret that could either scatter our quiet universe or anchor us into something deeper than we had ever dared to imagine. My heart learned to hold two rooms at once, the one where the life I built with Daniel might still echo in the hallways of our shared memories, and the one where I could imagine a new chapter unfolding with Marcus, a chapter in which love would be patient, healing, and true. If you crave more raw emotional confessions, please like, share, and subscribe. Your next chapter awaits. And as I step into the morning light, I carry with me the braided sense of earth and rain, the weight of a decision made not in rebellion, but in quiet hope, and the slow, shimmering truth that sometimes second chances appear when you least expect them, quietly knocking at the door of a life you have nearly forgotten how to trust, whispering that love, if tended with care, can bloom again. Hashtags flicker through my mind like tiny stars. Emotional storytelling, forbidden love. Second chances, mature romance, infidelity in marriage, love after loss, grief and healing, tenant love story, romantic narration, YouTube romance, healing through love, slow burn romance, older woman, younger man, heartfelt story, true feelings, emotional connection, faceless love, Olivia and Marcus, narrative romance, love found me, signs and symbols that a heart can learn to listen to, even when the world insists on silence. If you want more warmth that burns softly and truth that lifts you, stay with me, stay curious, and stay brave enough to believe in a love that can be both complicated and healing. A love that can hold a future even when the past still glistens in the corners of the room.